Okay, it's Cloud Scholar. So we are at the Azure portal right now, and what I want to talk to you about is those three platform logs, right? The first thing I want to jump into is the Azure Active Directory logs. So here I am in Azure Active Directory, and I'm going to come down to diagnostic settings. And if you look over here within diagnostic settings, you'll see it says click add diagnostic setting above to configure the collection of the following data. And now remember, I told you just three platform logs, but once you go from those three platform logs and think of it from a directory structure point of view, where you have your parent folder and subfolders, there are a ton of other logs here that you can apply to your Azure environment. So if I click on Add Diagnostic Settings, and I'm over here, I would first need to give it a diagnostic name. Just throw in anything there. It doesn't really matter. It's up to you. Scholars info, whatever. And then I have the different logs. So I could do my audit log, could do my signing logs, I could do my provisioning logs, I could do my risky user logs, so on and so forth, for whatever I want to do. And then I have an option to where I want to send those logs to. So remember in the PowerPoint deck, I was showing you the different options that you have. And right here, I can send it to a log analytics workspace. I can send it to archive storage. I can do a bunch of different things. So I'm going to say log analytics workspace. And I have one right now, which is in my East US, which is my Azure logs. If I wanted to, I can send it to a storage account as well, if I wanted to do that. Or I can stream it to an event hub. So you have the option to send it to multiple locations. I want you to keep in mind that if you are going to send it to multiple locations, that wherever you're sending it to, you may incur cost as well. So if you're going to have the same logs in different locations, does it really make sense to do it that way? Every organization is different, so there's no real way cookie cutter way of doing it. I like to do things that are tailor made to find out exactly what your needs are, what's the compliance needs, how long do you need to keep the data? Are you sending it to another location? So let's just say an event hub, so that this way you can upload it to a SIM. Then you would have the right teams involved for like the SOC analysis to say, okay, we have these alerts and we're looking at the data logs if anything is suspicious. So those are the kind of things you need to think of. So right now, I'm just going to click on save. And there you have your log information for your sign-ins within the Azure Active Directory. Now, I want to show you a couple different things and how this can easily get complicated. So let's say if I wanted to go to, I don't know, virtual machines. If I want to go to my virtual machines, I click on my virtual machine and I'm like, all right, you know what? Let me see what diagnostic settings are here. I could go to my virtual machine and, well, this one's not on, so let me go to something else. Let me do a public IP address. Let's do that one. That's good. So I'm going to come to my public IP address and I'm going to click on my public IP address and I will choose diagnostic settings. And then here, if I choose diagnostic, it says click add diagnostic settings above to configure the collection of the following data. Now, if you remember in the Azure Active Directory, there were a whole bunch more different logs that they were coming up with. Over here, this one's telling you about DDoS protection notification, flow logs of DDoS mitigation decisions, reports. So this is all the information that you can gather. So this way you're like, okay, for my public IP address, I want to see if somebody's really trying to hit us with any like DDoS attacks. So over here, if I click add diagnostic setting, and I have my different options. I still have to fill out the diagnostic setting name, right? I do have those same options for the destination details, but over here I have my different categories. If I click audit, it's just going to give me the DDoS protection notification. But if I click all logs, I'm going to get everything, and I can even do all metrics as well if I wanted to. But imagine having a laundry list of public IP addresses, right? Right now we only have two, right? But I'd have to go into each one of these and I would go ahead and make those changes. So this is why I was talking about the enforcement and doing things the correct way. Because as you can see, if somebody creates a new virtual machine, they add a public IP address, whatever the case may be, it doesn't matter if it's just this public IPs. You got to think about all the other Azure resources. This is going to leave room for error. Someone is going to build out a resource within Azure and forget to put the diagnostic settings there. And honestly, doing it this way does not make any sense. You're just looking for an issue. later on where you're like, oh, okay, we need to see what happened, and you're not able to see it. So this is one of the reasons why you want to do things and you want to set up stuff in a certain way, and you would want to use Azure Policies. So over here at Azure Policies, we want to force that recommendation. We don't want to go through and set up diagnostic settings for each and every resource. What you want to do is say, okay, come up with a template for which resources you have in your environment. And then from there, you can say, okay, what do we gather? What information do we need to get out of those resources? So if I were to come here and I filter it out, and I say diagnostic setting. So I have a bunch of different things here that are built in that I can do for diagnostic settings. So let me just do public that would make more sense. Public IP. So for a public IP address, we have a couple of built-in ones, and then I have a custom ones as well that I created, and I'm gonna jump into these as well. But let's go with the first ones that are built in, right? So we have enable login by category, public IP address. We are gonna go with this public IP address should have resource logs enabled for Azure DDoS protection. So if we look at this one and we look at the definition, we have the available effects. We have the default, which is audit if not exist. So right now, this one is going to do an audit if not exist. So I'm going to click on assign, and I need to create, apply it to the scope. So I'm going to go to subscription. I'm going to go to RGECUS, and I'm going to say, hey, all the other stuff I can leave the way they are. That's perfectly fine with me. We're not going to do resource selectors or overrides or anything like that. Parameters, we are going to say, you can have a diagnostic setting name, right, that you want to apply to us, but this is pretty much just saying, hey, it's going to audit it for us. So I can say, okay, my Azure logs, and I can just give it something, testing or something like that. But this isn't really going to do anything because this is going to just audit. And then for remediation, I could create a managed identity, and basically what this does is it's going to look at everything that was already deployed. So it says by default, this assignment will only affect on newly created resources. Existing resources can be updated via a remediation task after the policy is assigned. So that's what it's going to do. So I'll click next, and then next, and then I'll click create. So if I come back over here to policy compliance, you'll see right here, this is the one that we recently just did, which is the public IP address should have resource logs enabled for Azure DDoS standard. So right here, it says it's compliant at the moment, but I believe it's still running. Yep, compliant state not started. So the policies do take a little while to run and take effect within your environment. How long that takes is entirely up to your Azure environment. I haven't seen anything online that tells us a specific time frame of how long that takes. So this does take a little while. So what I'll do is I'm going to hold off and come back once this policy comes back and tells us exactly if we're in compliance or not in compliance. All right, so here we are. We're back at the Azure portal. And as you can see right now, it says public IP address should have resource log enabled, and it says non-compliant. So let's see what it says. It gives us our two public IP addresses, and it's saying, hey, these two public IP addresses are in use, but they don't have any diagnostic settings on. Because remember, this is only a audit if not exist. So this is going to audit us. So what I did was I created a custom policy, and this custom policy is this one right here, custom deploy public IP address. So I basically just took the same public IP address definition. And what I did, I made some changes, right? So how did I go about doing that? So if I come back to definitions, so over here, what I did is I just went back and I just typed in public IP, and this is the same one that we were at, I believe. So let's go public IP, yep. And what I did was I just duplicated the definition because I needed to make a modification to it. I didn't want it to do audit if not exist, right? So it gives you these options here, but it forces you to just audit if not exist. So I did a duplicate definition, and within that duplicate definition, if you see here, you can see that it has a lot of values. Is audit if not exist, deploy if not exist, disabled. What's another area that I should highlight for you? All this stuff says true. at the moment. And what I did is I just edited JSON file. So I'm going to come back here, and this is the duplicate that I created, which I put custom in front of it, but it's literally the same thing. And what I did is I changed it. And when I changed it, I made some modifications. So if you remember in the other one, it said it had more options, allowed values, deploy if not exist. And I'm going to jump back over here. And if you come back up to this one, you see right here, it says allowed values. It says audit if not exist, deploy if not exist. And I did the same thing, but I just took that out. And the default value, I put deploy if not exist. And over here, if you see the default value is audit if not exist. So that's how I went about in creating the custom policy, right? So I can get it to work. And then I made a couple more changes down here with the default value, which is true, and a little bit more further down, I believe, did the same thing. So that's how I went about creating a custom policy. It can be a little bit difficult time creating custom policies. It's got to take some time, and honestly, it's just practicing and getting it to work. So this same custom policy, let's see if I can edit the definition. Where do I have it to at the moment? So let me come back out of here. I believe I already have it applied. So let me click view all, and I have custom policy, and it's already applied to RG East US. So I don't have to make any changes to this. So right now it's saying it's non-compliant, but as I said to you before, it takes a little while for this to kind of take effect. So if I come back to this tab, and I come up here and I go to my public IP addresses, what that other policy is supposed to do is it's supposed to automatically look and say, hey, you don't have a diagnostic setting on it. I'm going to throw a diagnostic setting on for you. So let me jump back over here and let me go to my assignments, and I can go and find my custom deploy public IP address. And I can see right now it says here deploy diagnostic setting and then deploy if not exist. So if I go and view this definition, I actually don't want to come here. Give me 2 seconds. If I go to edit, I can go through and see what I did. So if I go to advanced, I know it's in the RG East US, that's the scope. Let's go to parameters. The diagnostic setting name is supposed to be deploy diagnostic setting, and it's supposed to go to a Azure workspace, my Azure logs. For the remediation, nope, I messed up on something. So this is a created remediation task. So this way that it goes for everything that's already deployed. So good thing I caught that. And then over here, I do my non-compliant message. I'm not going to put anything for that, and I'm just going to do review and save. So I hope that makes sense to everyone. So policy definition, have that information in there. And the name of it is supposed to be deploy diagnostic setting. So what this is saying here is it should come up with a diagnostic name that says deploy diagnostic setting. That's what's going to show up there. And I have everything else there, create, manage identity, and I have my remediation task for public IP addresses that are already deployed within my environment. So that is all set. I'm good right there. So what I'll do is I'm gonna give Azure a few moments to kind of go through its system and say, okay, I need to make some modification, and waiting for the policy to take place. So that could take a little while. So what I'll do is I'm gonna cut this video and come back once that policy takes place. All right, so the policy has taken effect. And you can see right here, it says custom deploy public IP address, and it says it's in compliance. It says overall resources, we have 2 out of 2, and compliance, it's not giving us anything down here. If I were to come over to this tab right here, as you can see right now, I'm just gonna refresh really quickly. You see that deploy diagnostic setting is there. So it remediated the public IP address and said, hey, you need to drop it into this log analytics workspace. So you can see, I'm going to look on this one as well. This one's in the RG East US resource group, and it did the exact same thing. So you can see how policies help you out, right? So we were talking initially about the 3 platform logs, right? We were also talking about going into your Azure Active Directory, doing your diagnostic settings, and make sure your logs are captured the right way. And then we also moved to public IP addresses, and you saw how I applied 2 different policies. One was initially was the audit if not exist, and it gave us and said, hey, you're not in compliance. And then the second one was, hey, you know what? I'm not going to do an audit if not exist. I'm going to deploy if not exist with a remediation plan attached to that. So as you can see, this is a proper way of doing it. Let me just jump really quickly back to the PowerPoint deck. All right, so you can see from the PowerPoint deck right now, we have our virtual machine scale sets, right? You can replace that for a public IP address. To be honest with you, is whatever Azure resource that you need to go through with your whole template design. And then we go down to define policy, and then you can see right here I have built-in policies, and then we didn't have a policy that really helped us within Azure. So this is the reason why I went ahead and created a custom policy, because that custom policy was going to help us out with it. So you have here, you have built-in policies, custom policies, or you have policy initiatives that help you out with now making those deployments. So that was really what this really boils down to, right? So this was how we can really go about applying policies so that this way we can get the right logs within our environment. So what I want to do next is I want to kind of show you how the policy initiatives can help you out as well with doing your login as well within your environment. Okay, so we're back over at the Azure portal. And one thing I want to do is I want to just kind of go really quickly through the policy initiatives for you. I'm not going to go in great detail about it, just an FYI. Just kind of just talk about it, right? So this is the policy initiative, and the difference between a policy initiative and a policy is basically a policy initiative is just policies on steroids, right? So you can combine multiple policies. So what you do is you come down here, it's pretty much the same thing as policy. You give your name, your description, all the other stuff here. You have your categories, but the section I really want to focus on is this one right here where you add policy definitions. So if I click on add policy definitions, over here in this section, I have all these different definitions that are in the Azure portal. As you can see, a lot of them are the built-in ones. And what I want to do is I'm going to come over here and I'm just going to type in public IP address. And then what you can see here is we have this. This is another custom one I had built out. This is the one that I applied that forced the diagnostic settings. And this is the built-in one, which just did the audit. So if you needed to do multiple policies and you didn't want to go through it one by one, you can do that within Azure, and you can do a policy initiative so that this way you can have multiple policies being applied to your resources. So that's really what I wanted to show you with the policy definitions. Let me just jump back over to the PowerPoint slide really quickly. So here we have the PowerPoint slide, which I have back up on the screen. And pretty much with this workflow, you should be able to attack your environment, right? So you should be able to capture, I don't know, I'll use the word attack, but capture all the logs within your environment by applying this kind of workflow right here. So you have your virtual machine scale sets. For our case, we're talking about public IP addresses. As I said to you before, switch that out for any Azure service. And then you have your different options if you want to apply for your policies. Whether if it's built-in, then great, use the built-in one. If that doesn't work for you, then you have to go the custom route. And then finally, you have your policy initiatives. So I hope that this information I provided you was beneficial. I want to thank you all for watching this video. If you made it to the end, please, if you haven't done so, please smash that like and subscribe button. Also, please follow us on Twitter. I'm going to be leaving the Twitter handle in the description as well. Please follow us on Twitter. We definitely post every week with new Azure services, and then also just things to help you out within your journey within the cloud, right? Motivational posts as well. Sometimes you need that just to pep you up in your day to kind of get you through your studies. So my name is Kieran Truss again, and I want to thank you for watching this video here at Cloud Scholars. Our goal is to get you from scholar to consultant and from consultant to expert. Thank you, and see you next time.